Hey everybody, my name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any time, let's get into our stories of the day. Never cheat for your child. So back in high school, I was classmates with a kid who, well, wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Take note, we were sophomores, grade 10 by now, so our batch had been together for 10 years. It's a small private school, so we were all pretty tight-knit. However, his mom believed he was the perfect little angel who would outshine everyone else. In reality, he only got those since his mom would bribe their way through the system to let the kid have the benefits, i.e., instead of trying out, the mom would pay their way into sports teams so he'd get credit only for him to be benched the entire game. The worst part was that as years went by, and to this day honestly, the kid bought into his mom's narrative and believed he was superior to many of us, with the mom making many outlandish claims. Among these tactics was something I'd noticed for a while. See, in the Philippines, instead of dividing the academic year in semesters, we had quarters, and within each quarter we had two major long tests. Henceforth, I'll be referring to as LTs. Then, after each quarter, we had a quarterly exam. Henceforth, I'll be referring to as QEs. As each quarter progresses, the quarter exams would aggregate lessons from the quarters that had passed along with that quarter's lessons. Anyway, for some time now, our class had noticed that this kid would call sick on the day of major exams, and then the mom would call on the kids in the higher bracket grading, who were supposedly close with the kid, to ask for the exact content of the tests so they could study it for the retest. Now, I'm not exactly a star student. Okay, not at all. But my grades were decent enough for her to consider me within that call list. I mean, I hung out with the guy and he was nice enough until his mom began inflating his ego. So, during the third quarterly exam for algebra, surprise, surprise, the kid calls in sick. Now this was pretty expected since everyone had already been betting on it. Sure enough, by evening, the mom calls me up asking exactly what was on the test. Each question and answer. I tell her off and she starts spouting on about grades are important and I'm just caring for the future of my child, and he deserves to be in the honor society, and you should be more charitable. Okay, whatever, lady. By this point, I'd had enough, so I comply, but with a twist. I end up giving her all the items of our second quarterly exam. Without a thought, she begins typing it down. I can hear her frantic fingers on the keyboard through the phone, and begins taking down each and every word I say. Here's the kicker. Our algebra teacher did not even include lessons from past quarterly exams. She thanks me profusely and how I'm such a saint and a savior to her son. Quit the sweet talk, lady. Anyway, kid comes in, takes the test, and oh look, he got an F. To add insult to injury, our teacher was one who'd put in the numerical percentage, so we had a clear idea on how we did. Kid got a 35%. The mom confronts me and says, "You lied! What you told me wasn't on the test!" I played the ignorance card and said, maybe he switched it up. They never bothered me again. He dropped from the honor society that year, people caught wind of the story, and started doing the same thing. Parents, never spoon-feed your kids. It never works out well. We're in college now, and all updates on the kid's college life are non-existent. We don't even know if he is in college. Every time we have a reunion, he's evasive on the topic, despite everyone openly talking about their ups and downs on uni life. Last we heard, the mom was claiming her little Einstein was taking a double degree. We have a classmate whose uncle is a professor in the said degrees, and he said he's never heard of the kid there. Personally, I would hate that. I don't want somebody mooching off of anything that I've done. If you're in an OP situation, you're on the phone with that kid's mom, what do you tell her or what do you do? Would you do the same thing OP did here? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. Stop making noise after 10 p.m.? Alrighty then. Sitting on the sofa, listening to some music with the window open on the first warm-ish day of spring, browsing through Reddit, a sudden realization hit me. I am reviving a gloriously mundane case of malicious compliance and can share it with you. So, story time. Some time ago, 4 years and change to be precise, my best friend and I move into a nice house with a cool inner garden and a tiny living room looking out into it. We, 20F at that point, weren't really into partying, but as most university students still had some friends who would come over 2 to 3 times in a month, in 2s or 3s to hang out, bake, drink some wine and chill. Nice times. Once the weather got warm enough, we would sit in the garden and talk. And here you'll just have to take my word that we were only talking once the clock hit 2200, as that's when the official night hours start round here. So no shouting, not even the quietest of music. No more than 4 people having a chill conversation in their own backyard. Working and studying, mind you, doesn't leave much time for such luxuries, so again, that's no more than twice a month. Across the fence, there lived a just-no family. An older lady and her husband in one house, and her daughter, toddler grandkids, and 2 small obnoxious dogs barking all day, every day, in the next, both sharing a garden bordering on ours. 2-meter high concrete wall between us and them additionally. We had never met them in person until they started showing up at 22:05, demanding that we go inside and close all windows so as to not be heard at all, because otherwise we are a great awful inconvenience, super loud and an absolute breach of the rules. Not true, but the constant bickering, threats and calls to the landlord spoiled any enjoyment of the garden and summer evenings for us. The final straw was when the husband appeared at 22:02, so he had obviously been waiting to lecture us about how we can be as loud as we want, but no later than 2200, because in this community we have rules. Alrighty then, cue malicious compliance. Both of us enjoy a wide variety of musical genres. Jazz, blues, swing, classical, folk, the occasional pop or rap track, you name it, and rock, and metal, abundantly. So, for the next 2 years, every evening with nice enough weather, the time from 2100 to 2200 became the neighborhood musical education hour. And at this point, it ain't jazz either, and is as loud as we dang well please. We're having a blast, unwinding from the day, incorporating all cooking and showering into a goddamn dance routine. Then, all music stops at the strike of 2200. Yes, we have an actual church with actual bells that ring even at that time of the night. And on, evening after evening, till the leaves start to fall and it gets too cold to blast some nice Rammstein or Pink Floyd or whatever through the huge butt living room window. They tried to complain to the landlord about it too, but at this point, he told them that they got exactly what they asked for and to pee right off. Only thing we hear from the other side of the fence nowadays is them screeching at their dogs. I swear to all the gods I don't believe in, if I hear that cookie sound once more, they're getting Marilyn Manson for a week straight. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Now, to answer a couple of the questions that have popped up repeatedly, and I promise to try and answer everything else as well. Yup, Southwest Germany it is. I never went over to the Karens, although I could have complained right back at them as you suggested. And that's for one reason. I would much rather end a tiring day on an upbeat note than with a pointless and frustrating argument. There were lots of different music, but don't imagine only metal. Playing Welcome to the Jungle, while the parents tried to herd the whole pack of kids and dogs inside, was a singular treat, for one. The Manson comment was a real-time reaction to one of them shouting after the dog while I was writing this, at around 21:30, so it's still in the cards for them. Having said that, I do have a lot more understanding for all types of frustration now that we are stuck at home. The music was not window-rattingly loud. I mean, I also have ears and I'm not about to metaphorically burn my house down in order to watch their barn burn. The usual volume of music in my home can have a normal conversation with it as background. The malicious compliance volume is somewhat around. I'd have to raise my voice a bit to have a conversation, but just a bit. Neither the other neighbors nor the landlord nor his 90-year-old mother, stays below, had a problem with it. The house of the Karen neighbors is 2 gardens away from ours basically, If they went inside and closed the windows, they wouldn't hear a peep. This only happens in the warmer months though, so everyone wants to enjoy the nice evenings outside, and given that they get annoyed at speaking, it is sure to bug them. The kids were toddlers when we first moved in. The music thingy started after 2.5 years of them nagging, so by the time they were 6-ish and allowed to play in the garden, even after 22 in the summer, it's not even dark out by that time anyway, so the music wasn't really messing with their sleep schedule. Also, still haven't heard them bopping along sadly. If all goes according to plan academically, however, I'll hang around some more, enough to see them into their prepubescent years, so there's some hope left. I'm glad the landlord went in their favor and not in the complaining, wait until 2200 and make sure they don't make a sound at all people. No beans! Years ago, I worked in a childcare center in the 1 to 2 year old room. All the food was made by a gourmet food company and brought in daily. Some was good, some was so bad. I'm not sure if it was really food. One kid was vegetarian and he had a lot of the same food over and over again. The poor kid, who I will call John Smith, hated beans and refused to eat if there were beans. I went through the proper channels in an attempt to tell the chef/owner of the food company not to send beans for the kid. This included emails, phone calls, and even a fax. Everything was ignored, and when I called, they told me they had no record and to say I'd raised the issue. Lies! They suggested that I leave a note in one of the styrofoam boxes the food came in. Again, nothing changed despite me talking to the delivery people who dropped off food and picked up the empty boxes as they got reused. I had jack of it, so I got a permanent marker and wrote over the sides and bottom of the box given to my room. No beans for John Smith, over and over again. At least 20 times on the lid I wrote, no beans for John Smith. That means no baked beans, lima beans, green beans, lima beans, chickpeas, lentils, cannellini beans, etc. No beans whatsoever. Call me if you do not understand no beans. It worked, and only took 3 months. Moral of the story, to get your message through, you only need to go so over the top and destroy a delivery box with instructions. Say it with me, no beans for John Smith. I hope John Smith enjoyed their new selection of food. You don't want me to proofread and correct your grammar? Sure. Background info. My boss is Swedish with English as a third language. I am Malaysian with English as my first language. My boss asked me to draft an email blast to clients due to lockdowns, informing them that we are still able to help them out with whatever they need. After sending her the draft, she supposedly corrected my bad grammar and sent it back to me. Thinking it was a typo, I corrected certain phrasing and sent it to the client, who is British. My boss saw the email and got mad and basically acted like a brat that I corrected her grammar and said, "I'm happy that you are confident your English is better than mine," and that I should not correct her unless she asks. I ignore this and end the workday. Fast forward 2 days later, my boss sends another email to this particular client, and due to her bad grammar, the client replies asking for clarification as to what she meant to say. I read the email and continue on with my day until my boss texts me asking me why I didn't clarify what she meant in her email to the client, and I repeated that she did not want corrections unless she asked. From what I see, she got exactly what she was asking for. And how hard is it to have some kind of grammar or spell check type thing on your computer? In my opinion, I don't think there's really much of an excuse. Read my lease, you say? Apologies if there are any formatting issues since I'm writing this on mobile. Anyway, this grudge has been simmering for almost a year now and has only just come to fruition. It began with my next door neighbor leaving me a passive-aggressive note for having trash outside my door while I was cleaning my apartment. 2 important notes here. 1, I was deep cleaning because the landlord sent a note saying the adjoining apartment, my neighbors, had roaches. I needed to clean so the exterminator could see if my apartment was infested as well. 2. The trash was by my door for 30 minutes at most. I was trying to save a trip to the dumpster and doing a final sweep of the apartment before heading down. Now, prior to this incident, this neighbor had already ticked me off by constantly blaring their loud music to the point where my apartment walls vibrated. Fortunately for them, I preferred to avoid confrontation, so I never called them out on it. After the passive-aggressive note calling me a pig though, all bets were off. She wrote that I should read my lease since I left my nasty trash everywhere. Okay, idiot, it's on. I read my lease like I was snorting coke off it. Every time they played their music loud, I filed a noise complaint. When I got a whiff of pot coming from their apartment, I filed another complaint. The lease says tenants must comply with the state's drug laws or risk eviction, so hey, another win for me. Finally, they brought a dog into the apartment despite the no pets policy exception only being for service animals. This was obviously not a service dog since it howled day and night, betraying no semblance of training. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who complained after that final stunt, since my landlord said the noisy dog problem was being taken care of through litigation and my next door neighbor's lease would not be renewed. Guess she should have read it. Obviously, one of the neighbors was a lot worse than the other, and I think we all know who. But with that said, that's all the stories we have for today. So what I want to know is which of these stories were your personal favorite and why? Let me know which one piqued your interest the most in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.